Right, good evening, members, officers, and anyone joining us from the residence. Okay, welcome to the executive meeting, 15th of March 22. And we'll begin with apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Robin Perry has sent his apologies.
Thank you. All right, members, are you happy for me to sign the minutes from the 15th of February and the 28th of February? Thank you. All right. Do we have any declarations of interest, either virtual or in the room, for the items we're going to be discussing this evening? Okay, Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one on item number 6, which is a non-pecuniary interest. So the nature of the interest is that Camberley Beesom are mentioned as potential beneficiaries. I do volunteer with them, and a member of my family, immediate family, is also one of the key workers with them. So that's a non-pecuniary interest.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bates. Any other declarations? No? Okay, thank you. All right. Item 4, any questions by members for myself or the portfolio holders? No. Okay. Oh, Councillor Wheeler?
Thank you. Sorry, I'm swapping from Teams to Zoom. All my buttons are in the wrong place. I just wondered whether or not we had a response to, I believe we wrote before around the housing figures, with the local plan being published for consultation this week. We had written before to the government minister responsible for housing figures, and I think from memory we had agreed subsequently to write to Michael Gove to contest the housing allocation in this area, given the SSSI, and I just wondered if we had the courtesy of a response yet.
Right, Councillor Wheeler, I remember the conversation, I remember the action. I wrote to, as you say, the Minister for Housing, Michael Gove, with the points that were made in the meeting. I'm actually pretty certain that he replied and the letter was circulated. Now, if you don't have it, that makes me nervous that perhaps it didn't go out. But what I will do is I will check that and either send it out again, or I'll make sure you get a copy. And if I'm wrong, then I will let everybody know that we haven't received a reply. But I'm fairly certain that we did receive it and it went out. Okay. To preempt your second question, was he sympathetic to our position? Absolutely. Was he in a position or ready to do anything about it which would have provided us with help to reduce our numbers? He indicated a number of things we could look at. And we're looking at those, but my own belief is that they won't help us reduce our numbers by very much, if at all. Okay.
Thank you. I have checked. I can't find it in my inbox. It's right. A fairly huge inbox, but yeah, I can't find it.
Well, I'll definitely check and either get it out to you, or if it indicates that it hasn't gone out to everybody, I'll get it out to everybody. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for myself or the portfolio holders? Okay, thank you. All right. So, first item, members, annual plan 22-23. So, back in, I think it was late 21, about October, we agreed the 5-year plan. And this is year 1, and as we know, what happens is we take the objectives of the 5-year plan, turn them into 5 annual plans, this being the first one. The draft of it was sent to Performance and Finance Scrutiny in January. They made a number of questions stroke recommendations. Most of those have been incorporated into this final draft. And you'll see that the plan is the four main areas: environment, health and quality of life, economy, and an effective and responsible council. Councillor Duggan will be pleased to see that every single objective has a date and who is responsible for delivering it, not only the officer, but whose portfolio it comes under, and a set of KPIs. All right. We have, obviously in the appendix, the actual plan, but that is the bare bones of it. I'm happy to try and answer anyone's questions. Okay. Oh, Councillor Tapper? Yeah. Yellow hand on a yellow wall. Top left-hand corner. Like an
Sorry
eagle.
about that. I'm trying to be politically correct. Yes, page 23. I wonder if I might ask a question about the progress of the funding for EV chargers. Now, as my understanding is, at the present moment, there is a trial going on, which is being led by Surrey County Council, but we are proposing to install chargers in our own car parks. I'm wondering whether, what progress has been made? Are we waiting for Surrey County Council to progress their own fund application to go beyond a trial and install the project in full? Or are we applying for our own funding to fund our own chargers in and on our own property? Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Tedder. So to be clear, you're talking about ENV 17, where we're intending to, as you say, install charging points in the council-owned car parks. The actual funding thereof, it's obviously not part of this agenda, what we're talking about now, but let's just see if we can get you an answer. Mr. Stevens?
I believe we're considering both options in parallel. So we're reviewing the collective offer through Surrey County Council and also engaging with other providers to understand the business case of both.
Well, I don't think we can be any more comprehensive than that, Councillor Tedder. Oh, Tapper. Doesn't even look like Pat, does he? Okay.
I'm trying to know whether how I should take that. No, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
That answer does answer at least my immediate query. I will obviously be interested to learn about our actual progress in due course, and maybe you can keep us appraised of that as and when.
I know I'm telling you what you already know, but the agenda item is that we approve or not this plan so that the officers can get on with the, actually actioning the plan. Okay, any other questions? Any other questions for myself or anything else on the plan? No. Okay. What I would say, I'm taking the question because this has been through a number of iterations, as I say, including P&F, who discussed it at length and in some detail, came up with some good amendments which are incorporated. And I think this, I would say this, but I actually think this is again a more detailed, more achievable, more thought out plan. Obviously based on what we've done before, but takes us forward, so good. So members in the room, we are asked to resolve that the attached plan for 2022-23 be agreed. Thank you. All right. Item 6, Household Support Fund. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Leader. I'm sure you're all aware of the household grant scheme by now, so I won't go into all the details. This is a central government scheme for distribution to those who are in the greatest need locally. All monies have been to be allocated by the 31st of March or be returned. We have been allocated a further £21,650.39 due to underspends in other county council authorities and the particular need in our number of wards. The most up-to-date figures as of yesterday, we have granted £129,192, which is 1,650 claims, with 57,895 allocated for food and 59,690 allocated for energy and water. 66% to families with children and 34% to those without children. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Right. Do we have any questions? Nope. Okay. Good. All right. As you say, a good scheme that's it's obviously doing well. Okay. Oh, is there someone? No. Okay. So, members, we are advised to resolve that number one, the revised action plan outlined in paragraph 22 and the allocation outlined in paragraph 3 of this report be agreed. And two, in order to ensure that all money is allocated, authority be delegated to the head of HR, performance and communication, in consultation with the portfolio holder for support and safeguarding to distribute the funds as required. Are we so resolved? Agreed. Thank you. All right. Item 7, Camberley CCTV. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Leader. This paper is to note and review the outcomes of existing CCT review in Camberley Centre undertaken over the last 6 months. To enable the Council to move forward with its CCT review, we need to put in place a CCTV management group. This group is to meet and develop short and medium-term plans to meet ICO governance requirements, based upon the local community and business requirements by optimising all resources available without cost to the Council, be noted, and the terms of the reference to be outlined as in Annex A in the paper. Assuming this paper is agreed tonight, a meeting needs to be organised at the earliest convenience for the CCTV management group to meet. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the CCTV paper? Okay. All right. I think it's pretty clear what it's trying to achieve there. So, Executive, we're advised to resolve small 1, CCTV management group, implemented to a consistent approach to connecting all council teams involved in the area, be established. 2, the outcome of the CCTV in focus audit carried out in 2021 relating to the town centre in Old Dean. And for the above group outlined to develop a short-term, medium-term plan to meet the ICO governance requirements based on the local community and business requirements by optimising all resource available without cost to the council, be noted. And 3, the terms of reference for this group as outlined in Annex A be agreed. Are we agreed? Agreed. Okay. Right. Item 8. This is my paper. Okay. So, scheme of delegation of functions to officers. We have a helpful abbreviation here given to us in the paper, which seems to read sod off to. Right. 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 I'd like to thank the officer that came up with that abbreviation, Mr. Ramtall. Okay. Right. This is, as members know, yet another step in the continuing review of our constitution by the monitoring officer, Mr. Ramtall. It has gone through the same process that all of the other papers have, where it's gone to the governance working group. There's been which is cross-party. We've had the discussion, and we have accepted, and we're making these recommendations. Just quickly, 2.1 to 2.4 are basically admin around title changes and the structure changing. 2.5 delegates authority to the CEO to make changes to the exec committees in line with the relevant group leader. That's an example where if a councillor resigns through ill health or whatever reason, we have to reshuffle the committees. That has to come back to either the executive or the council, whereas it makes sense that the group leader agrees that with the chief exec. 2.6, 2.7, these are effectively working practice right now with grants, so we're just formalising it. 2.8, 2.9, 210, 211 are operational, and therefore it's appropriate for the officers to do that, shouldn't be ours. All right. We've removed a couple of delegations. I had to reread this one and ask the monitoring officer to bring it up a couple of times at governance. It is apparently a function of the executive up until now in the constitution that we name the pantomime every year. All right. I've been on the exec for 6 years. Right? Oh, it's just, you know, all right. I've been on the exec for 6 years. I don't think we've named it once, but you know, as part of the clear out and just getting the things right, we are removing that from the executive and we're making that officers. And a more interesting one is that the delegation was that the officers, obviously the 151 officer sets the council tax base, and no 1.5 officer has ever taken that delegated authority. It's always been put back to the executive, quite rightly, so we're rewriting that one. And just for interest, it was discussed at some length. There was a suggestion that the officers get the authority delegated to them to increase parking charges on an annual or biannual basis, and the working group felt strongly that that should remain with the executive. So it is not in there. Okay. All right. I am happy to answer any questions. No. Okay. So, looking again at sod off to. All right. We are advised to resolve that the scheme of delegation of functions to officers in respect to executive functions be updated as set out at Annex A to this report. Are we agreed? Okay. Thank you. Okay. That's going to stick now, Gavin, that is. Right? Yeah. That's the first paper that's ever laid it out just like that. Yeah. Okay. Right. Item 9, revenue monitoring report for this financial year. So obviously, Councillor Perry would be doing this. I'm going to step in and introduce the paper, and I may well ask Mr. Watson to help me with some more detailed answers if required. So the revenue budget 2021-22 monitoring report for quarter 3. So monitoring report. So this would be up until December. Members, you'll remember that, as it says in 1.2, at the end of quarter 2, end of September of last year, the monitoring officer and the officers were forecasting an overspend against budget of 1.6 million. Obviously not good news. However, I'm pleased to report there's been quite a good progress. So this report, by the end of quarter 3, the forecast is now, for the end of the financial year, the overspend against budget is now forecasted to be 893,000. With a lot of hard work by the officers, careful management and prudent decision making, that's a reduction of over £700,000. If you look at 1.3 and 1.5, there's a list there. It's worth just reminding ourselves of what the main reasons are for the overspend. And I say the main reasons because it's not singly. They fall into external and internal. The external ones are rental income from investment properties. You'll see that they're only forecast to generate £2 million when the budget was 3 million. So we're coming up £1 million short on our income, even though 2 million is still a good number. Car parking is going to be short around 400k, and we know that that's footfall. The good news there certainly is that we're seeing numbers coming through now where footfall in the town, in Camberley Town, is starting to go back to pre-COVID 2019 levels. Inflation, we didn't know when we set the budget what was going to be happening with inflation, and that's cost us over 50k. And of course, the HGV shortage for green waste has cost us another 75k in lost income. So those are the external factors. Unfortunately, there's some internal factors. Poor budgeting, I think. If you look at the new leisure centre, there's 191k in there where it was contractual. So nothing wrong with paying it, but it wasn't actually put in the budget. It's clearly a mistake. And staffing, planning and finance, there's been additional costs of 234k as we have tried to manage the staff changes and the keeping on top of the service. I think overall, however, I am extremely pleased. I think we should all be extremely pleased to see the forecast overspend reduced by 44% in a quarter, with the reasonable expectation that we may make further improvements in Q4, which of course will be the actual. We'll have the end results then rather than be forecasting. All right. I'm happy to try and answer any questions along with Mr. Watson. Councillor Malvaginam.
Thank you, Leader. I hadn't even put up my hand. There you go. Thank you for calling me anyway. Leader, I'm sorry that you could not attend the last PNF meeting when we discussed this. I'm sure you're very busy. And nor did your finance exec. I raised a point at that meeting. Are we comparing like with like apples and oranges and so on and so forth? It's available on YouTube for you to review. The council approved a budget for 21-22 at 14 million. Here we are. You are looking at this budget at a full year budget. You say it's 12 million. Now, very clearly, we are not comparing like with like. And similarly, it so happened I sort of didn't have the paper before the PNF, so I had to rush on getting the other papers. Similarly, exec, when the half-year results came out in exec, again, the figure was very different to the 14 million. I had spoken to the Section 141 officer in your absence and in the absence of the finance exec, who is not here as well again. If you're comparing it, you have to compare with one static figure. The 14 million was the figure which the full council approved. Now, all of a sudden, we got figures which are changing every 3 months, 6 months, then now 3 months. I'm sure you won't have the answer, but it would be proper that when these numbers are produced, that we are consistent in what we are doing. Section 151 officers acknowledged it. I'm just bringing it to your attention, Leader, so that you can take it up at a later stage with the officers or even with your finance exec. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just deal with a couple of things first before I ask Mr. Watson to come in. You've mentioned a couple of times at exec that it's a pity that I didn't attend PNF. I'm not actually on the PNF committee, and I don't routinely attend PNF committees. If there's something there that I think is really important, and as you say, I have no other meeting on, then I'd be glad to attend. Councillor Perry, as far as I know, did actually attend virtually, but was called away for a short time during the meeting, but it actually does show he was there. And unfortunately, I know you mentioned you decided to say that it was unfortunately wasn't here. It is unfortunately wasn't here this evening, but I know he has a personal matter that he had to deal with and has sent his apologies. When you have these meetings, or when you ask a question or make a point, we have a history, don't we, Councillor Malvaginam, of you pointing out several things that you feel are wrong with the accounts. And And what can often happen is that you then get an answer from myself or from Councillor Perry or from the 151 officer, which turns out that it wasn't quite clear in your understanding of the numbers. And that's okay. You haven't been a councillor very long, so I don't expect you to know too much about the accounts. But let's go to Mr. Watson and see what he has to say.
Thank you very much, Leader. Yes, Councillor Wagenham did raise the point at BNF committee, and I undertook to that committee that I would provide a reconciliation between the budgets. It is underway with my team currently, but the main reason between the discrepancy from in February to the 6-month reporting period is the budget set in February contained depreciation charges. Now, in local government accounting, you don't put depreciation charges in your management accounts. So that's why the number has moved in the management accounts that we're reporting currently. Then there's a movement between the month 6 outturn position and the month 9 forecast outturn or budget position. Again, this is where during the year we get various supplementary estimates, and also we approve the carry forwards from the previous year that come into the current year budgets. So that will obviously uplift the budget back up again. So we saw the movement coming down in month 6 because of the depreciation charges being removed, and then the movement moved back up again as we built in supplementary estimates that have been approved through the correct process, and also the carry forwards that were approved at year end.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mavagnam, do you want to just come back if you have a supplementary question?
No, I just want to just to thank Mr. Watson. I'm sure he's right. Used to the fact that you start with a static figure and compare everything to static. So if it's I know in public sector it may not happen, but it'd be nice if it's a 40 million compared to 40 million, even if it's non-cash movement, so that we are actually doing where we are. As far as the numbers, Leader, you made a comment as to have been proven incorrect. I don't believe I've ever been proven incorrect. So far, I've been consistent in picking the errors up for the benefit of the council. It's not a political statement or anything like that whatsoever. So I would reconsider your statement. I don't want you to answer me now. Quite happy for you to think about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions on the revenue paper, the monitoring paper? Councillor Bates.
Thank you. I wasn't going to comment on this, but I guess two things. One is nothing to do with the paper, but just as it's been mentioned about attending scrutiny committee, I know that it used to be the rule that members of the executive did not actually attend scrutiny committees unless they were actually invited to do so. And that was actually a rule. And the reason is so that they didn't actually influence what went on in the scrutiny committee. Now, because obviously they're being scrutinised themselves, so there was no question of unreasonable pressure being put on people. Now, I'm not sure if that rule still applies, but certainly that was the rule. So I personally don't think you should be attending scrutiny committee unless you are actually invited to do so by the chair. In terms of the finance part, though, I do have a lot of sympathy here with what Councillor Mavagnam is saying. I think, and I listened carefully to what the officer said there in terms of the reason for that, and it may be the tradition or whatever in terms of local government accounting. And I'm sure that's correct, and he's obviously been a long-standing senior officer in many authorities. But I do think it is reasonable for us to have that understanding written down in the report, because we are talking here about significant amounts. We are talking here about discrepancies of £2 million, for example. We're not talking here about a few £1,000 here or there. So I do think it's reasonable that when we present reports going forward, even if it has not traditionally been put in it, then the same numbers do need to be clear within that. So I would encourage that we do that going forward, even if we just put depreciation being the £2 million difference or whatever that might be. But I do think it's a fair point that's being made here in terms of the different levels and the 3 different numbers. I did actually look it up myself after the scrutiny committee to kind of reassure myself, and I think it is a fair point being made.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. I just looked at Mr. Watson and he gave me the thumbs up that he agreed with you. And I think we can all agree we as a council have been in the unfortunate position where we have had a number of 151 officers, primarily due to the restructuring that we decided we needed in the senior management team and created the new role of director. And I, for one, am very happy that Mr. Watson has joined us, and I'm absolutely sure that we will see the benefit of that steady hand as it comes forward. And I know you've got a lot of changes you want to make, and I'm assuming you're very happy to take on board what Councillor Malvaginam and Councillor Bates have said.
Indeed, Leader, and it's something that I've done previously, is always reconciled back to the agreed council budget, and going forward there will always be a reconciliation in the budget monitoring back to the budget there, so you can see exactly what's moved and why it's moved. I fully agree, this should be happening. It hasn't been, and therefore we will do it going forward.
Okay. And I won't mention anything about the fact that you've been here several weeks now, and it's surprising that you haven't achieved that yet. Thank you. Okay, are there any other questions for myself or Mr. Watts? Okay, all right. So, members of the executive, we are advised to resolve that we note the spend against the approved revenue budget for the period 1st of April to 31st December 2021 and the end of year forecast. Are we agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Right. Item 10. So again, it would have been Councillor Perry, but I'm filling in. So Capital Programme 2021-22 monitoring report, again, Q3 from, say, December. So this is a new report which is giving us the opportunity to understand in the round where we are with capital projects. By the end of this financial year, we will have spent 36% of the capital budget. And if you look at Appendix 1 on page 110, that will give you the 38 capital projects that are in the budget. Now, there are two main reasons. You may think, well, only a third of the capital, but there are two main reasons why. First and foremost, our standard procedure is to place 100% of a capital budget in a one-year window, even if the plan is known to be that we'll spend that capital over several years. And Mr. Watson and I have discussed this and with Mr. Perry and Councillor Perry, and we're going to be changing that to over a 4-year period. Because it doesn't make sense. If you know you're going to spend zero of a budget in year 1, and all of it's going to be spent in year 2, 3, and 4, why does it show up as 100% in year 1? So we'll be doing that. The second thing is that the Property Investment Working Group asked Mr. Roberts, the Chief Exec, to delay starting any new projects or phases until a thorough review of each project is done for viability, given the inflation costs of materials, etc., and frankly, given our financial position that we want to try and preserve as much as possible our services, etc., then we need to have another fresh look at each project and say, is this actually still required? All right. So I'm happy to answer any questions. No. Okay. In which case then, members, the executive is advised to resolve that they note the expenditure on the capital programme for the period 1st of April to 31st of December 2021 and the end of year forecast. Are we so advised? Thank you. All right. Okay, we're going to move on to item 11 here, write-off of irrecoverable bad debt. Councillor Perry took an excellent night off. All right. I just want to kind of give a warning first to all members. What the members have is the paper that you have in front of you, plus the annex, which is the table of all the details of the debts that we're writing off. That is not in the public domain. And this paper comes to us twice a year. A version of it comes to us twice a year. And I always give the same reminder that you can refer to the annex, but you must not refer to any names of individuals or addresses that can identify them. Okay. All right. You could talk about the fourth line and it's £12,000 or something, but no details. Okay. All right. So, as I say, this is the write-off of irrecoverable bad debt. Twice a year we see the paper. And to be honest, we probably all still have exactly the same reaction every time the paper comes to us, which is negative. However, I'd just like to remind members that we, Surrey Heath Borough Council, were number one in the nation at collecting business rates at 99.8%. We're also number 6 in the nation at collecting council tax at 98.7%. Right. Bad debts are, unfortunately, a part of life, and I know, having gone through this a number of times with Councillor Perry and the 151 officers, that the officers do not bring these to us unless absolutely everything has been done to try and recover them. And you can see in the notes that everything has been done, from chasing to find out where people are all the way through to taking them to court, etc., which has not been easy, given where we are just now with the current laws. So, any questions on this paper about irrecoverable bad debt write-off? I see Councillor Alloway and then Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, 2 questions for sure. One is there any commentary as why for council tax debt there's a disproportionate representation of a gender? Hopefully I've not overstepped the mark there. And 2, there appears to be like serial non-payers yearly continuing to fail to pay their business rental tax. I just wonder how that's allowed to happen year on year on year.
Right, let me take the first one. Did you say there was a particular bias towards a gender?
Yeah, if you look at the council tax defaulters, if that's the right term, there's a disproportionate representation of gender. I just wonder if there's any commentary behind that to understand why.
Jim, that's an interesting question. It's not something I had picked up on. Is there an answer to why there would be a disproportionate number of, in this case, debts that are being written off to what is now, looking at the first names, I'm assuming they are a higher proportion of female? Mr. Watson?
I will only be speculating here. The council has a policy that we will generally pursue the people who won't pay rather than the people that can't pay. It's probably a sad indictment that the majority of these people on here are not able to pay their debts, hence why they have various voluntary awards against them, saying that they're unable to pay. And it's probably the fact that they're probably, I'm only guessing again, single parents with very little income coming in. And we are unable to pursue these people because they are probably the most vulnerable if they've got families as well.
I'm guessing, Councillor Alloway, we're talking more about a national picture rather than a particular quirk or policy of this council or Surrey Heath as a borough. Your second point was about serial abstainers from paying, okay. Particularly to do with did you say business rates or with council tax?
Both. But I think probably the council tax issue has been answered by Bob in his reply. The business rates ones would be an interesting one to understand why we continue to allow non-payments to happen year after year.
Okay. I think looking, council tax, I think it's so much easier to take enforcement action against a business, isn't it? This council takes a view, and Mr. Watson just outlined it there, that we try very, very hard to go after people who won't pay, as opposed to we try and support the people who can't pay. And I think that's why you're seeing some years where some of these numbers, if you look at them, are, and forgive me for those people who don't have the table, but the members do, those numbers quite often are not the full council tax number, and it makes it clear that somebody has been trying to pay, and they may owe from 2019, 2020, 2021, but they have been paying something towards their council tax until eventually they've reached a point where they can pay no more, and we now need to write off the debt. So I think that's why you're probably seeing that. It's the manifestation of our trying very hard to support someone whilst also trying to get the money for, well, frankly, on behalf of the other residents who are paying. All right. Okay.
Yeah, okay, that's a fair comment, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bates?
Thank you. I think that's a very sharp point by Councillor Allaway, actually, and I think maybe we need to look at that in terms of the previous reports that we've had, because these are every 6 months that we have that. And I certainly hadn't thought about that before, but it could be that there are some issues here that we just need to look into in terms of our equality policies and things like that. That wasn't the point I was going to make, but I just thought it's certainly worth considering further. The point I was going to make was that when we had this meeting in March of 2021, I raised the issue about bailiffs. And in fact, you may remember that I have raised this issue about bailiffs for personal individual household debt on more than one occasion. And I just double checked the minutes of the meeting last year, and it was suggested that there be a report to the Performance of Finance Portfolio, the Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee regarding the use of bailiffs and the appropriateness of bailiffs in terms of individual household debt. Now, I haven't been to all of the meetings, but I just wonder whether that has actually taken place, that report, because I know a number of members were quite concerned about the use of bailiffs, and not every council actually does use bailiffs to get council tax debt. I'm not sure I do agree with you, actually, or indeed officers, that it is only those who won't pay. I think there are examples of where they can't pay, but I do agree that there is effort made, if I can put it like that. But nonetheless, I still think there is an issue here that we just need to reassure ourselves about in terms of whether it is appropriate to use bailiffs for individual households. And I know some councillors have given their own personal stories about this, but I just want to make sure that we actually do complete that report if it hasn't already been done. I don't know if the chairman of the Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee can confirm whether it's been done, so I haven't been to every meeting, but I don't remember the report, and it is specifically minuted from this time last year.
Councillor Malvaginam?
Sorry, Councillor Bates, I'm not 100% sure it's come up. I would have to double check and get back to you on that.
Okay. All right, Councillor Bates, I think...
Sorry, my vice chair wants to say something.
Oh, okay.
I don't believe it has been discussed at Performance and Finance. I remember you suggesting that it should be, but I don't remember it coming up.
So let's just take care of that one then. You said you've read it in the minutes, so it's there as an action. All right. Obviously, it slipped through the net. We should catch that. And then a report along the lines of what we've agreed in those minutes will be presented to P&F for their consideration and any recommendations that they want to make. It's a fine balance, isn't it, Councillor Bates? It's a fine balance between we have a duty to have everyone pay their way if they can, and we've got a lot of programs and systems in place to help people who can't. But I would absolutely agree that occasionally somebody who can't gets caught in the system. That said, when you and I have, when it's been raised before about the use of bailiffs, I'm afraid you and I are on completely opposite sides. All right? I think that they're a tool, not just to be used, but the fact that they're a threat. People wouldn't want it. Those people who won't pay, I dread to think what our collection rate would be if people knew that we would never, ever call them in. And I think some people do pay because there's the threat of that. But I definitely take your point that you have raised it several times, and you're quite right. If a report should have been written, then we should have written that. So I'll wait to see what P&F say. I always like to give, oh, your hand's gone up. So I was going to say, I like to give people a chance to come back rather than cut them off. Councillor Bates?
Sure. I mean, look, we can have a debate in due course. The key point is that we need to have it. And we've been talking about it for a while. So that's why a report does need to be written, so that we all understand the facts about it. We can look at those authorities that aren't actually progressing in the way that we're outlining, and then we can take a measured view on it. Rather than our own personal views, we can actually look at the facts around it and take it from there, and perhaps take guidance from other agencies who are working in this field as well. I just think we owe it to ourselves and our residents to look at this issue. We don't yet need to know what the outcome's going to be, but that's the key, is to make sure we actually do have that discussion.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there are no other questions then. All right, okay, members, we are advised to resolve that bad debts totalling £49,153.55 in respect of council tax and £93,045.17 in respect of non-domestic rates be approved for write-off. Are we agreed? Thank you. Okay. The last two items, exclusion of the press and public, and then review of exempt items. You have in your papers, item 3, write-off of irrecoverable bad debts, and the recommendation is that the annex containing personal data to remain exempt, which is our normal. Okay, and that's the only item. Now, we can go into exempt and discuss that, but if no one has any issue that they want to raise with that, then in fact we can skip and just go straight to agreeing it. Now, does anyone who's joining us wish to discuss anything about the annex contained in the item we've just discussed? No. Okay, and we don't have it in the house. Okay, well, in which case then, I think I'm right in doing this. We've skipped item 12, and item 13 is the recommendation, as I said, is the annex containing personal data to remain exempt. Are we agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, that brings the meeting to a close. Thank you very much, members. Thank you, officers. And thank you, anyone who was joining us. Thank you. Good night.